Have you ever wondered why dogs bark at night and shadows seem to move on their own? Perhaps your furry best friend isn't going completely crazy at the possums and is actually barking at a ghost train that is carrying restless spirits all across the world, conducted by the daughter of Hades himself, Melanie. My name is JAC History, and today we talk about Melanie, who is the goddess of propitiation, funerary rites, ghosts and nightmares. Now, who is Melanie? She's the bringer of nightmares, the representation of madness itself, and the antithesis to sanity. She leads a spectral army carrying restless spirits who feel wronged by the living, as they sought for retribution, spreading fear and madness to those who they feel wronged by. However, Melanie was not universally feared. In fact, we have so little information about her that we believe most people from ancient Greece either did not know she existed or believed in her. But from what texts we do have, it is believed that she had a generous side, heavily focused on the justice for the forgotten dead. In Greek mythology, a god or goddess represents a concept, emotion, or occurrence in human life. For example, Melanie is the daughter of Hades, who is the Greek god of the underworld, as well as Persephone, a notorious pomegranate enthusiast. Melanie herself is the goddess of vengeance, nightmares, fears, and funerary rites. Melanie's parentage was quite a controversial topic in ancient Greece. Many believe Persephone was the real mother, but whether or not Hades was the real father was unknown. Now, Hades being the god of the deceased, many believed he could not create new life and therefore could not be a father. This left the question of who was Melanie and Heracles' fathers. Many ancient Greeks wondered if her real father was Zeus, the sky father as well as leader of Olympus. Not only is Zeus famous for leading Olympus, he is also infamous for going to amazingly great lengths to spread his seed, so to say. The amount of stories in ancient Greek mythology that start with just Zeus wanting to get laid and going to unimaginable lengths to get there is actually astounding, and I feel generally sorry for his several wives. Anyway, back to our main topic. The belief on how Persephone got pregnant by Zeus is that Zeus disguised himself as his brother and Persephone's husband to bed Persephone, who also, by the way, is his daughter, to add an extra level of creepy to this already quite disgusting story. The amount of dramatic love affairs in Greek mythology is astounding, almost as astounding as how many of them involve incest. Others believe Hades could create life despite being the god of the dead, and actually believe several deities are born to the king and queen of the underworld. The third belief comes from Orphic myth, which puts Zeus and Hades as the same person. In Orphic mythology, they are both separate and one at the same time, which means both Zeus and Hades are Melanie's father. Because of her parentage, Melanie was also linked to death just like her siblings. For example, Mikira was the goddess of the blessed. She took care of those who died courageously in battle, childbirth, or other brave circumstances, as they were considered blessed. In the case of the Urners, on the other hand, they were underworld deities of vengeance, each with their own forte, and they acted in the underworld as punishers for those who broke their oaths or lived poor lives. In the case of Melanie, she is the goddess of propitiation. Propitiation is the act of appeasing or appealing to the dead for good favour. The Greeks believed that leaving gifts, offerings, or even visiting the graves of deceased relatives or friends, and any other action of honouring the dead, could protect them from harmful spirits. Melanie would gather these offerings and bring them to the underworld for the spirits on those who dishonoured them. So for example, if you wake up startled in the middle of the night, you hear a strange noise, and you look down to see at the foot of your bed your grandma angrily looking down upon you, because you did not leave her any gifts or cards on her birthday, like she explicitly said in her will, Melanie would bring her up to get revenge on you. Hades' daughter served as justice for the dead. Those who felt they were not properly honoured could receive justice from the living by frightening those who wronged them. At night, Melanie led a spectral ghost train to the land of the living. They terrified and punished all who saw them, and even for those who didn't see them, they felt a sense of dread and uneasiness from their sheer presence. In true Greek fashion, she was born in a unique location for her purpose. In Melane's case, she was born at the mouth of the Cocytus River, at the base of her cousin Hermes, in his role as a psychopomp, which is an escort for the underworld to carry souls. As I mentioned earlier, Melanie could cause night terrors and nightmares in anyone she wished. She did this by morphing into rather bizarre forms, turning invisible to whisper in people's ears, and appearing as a shadow, a power she shared with her father Hades. It's believed Melanie wore a saffron-coloured veil all across her face, and though she could change her form into any appearance to cause fear in those who view her, it is believed her proper form was half black and half white, to represent the dual nature of her fathers, Zeus being the white side as the father of the sky, and Hades being the dark side, being the king of the underworld. Others believed her two-toned skin represents her two sides of being a goddess, one for the justice side and the other for the side of death. Those who saw her in an entourage of ghosts, whether it be by accident or because they failed to leave an offering at the deceased's graves, were immediately driven insane by the sight. And it's believed that she would transform into any ungodly creature to cause true insanity and terror in her victims. Melanie was shown to close companion of the witch goddess Hecate, who travelled with Lapidus. The two groups often travelled together. Sometimes she was even considered an epithet of Hecate rather than a separate entity on her own. This would explain why there's so little information about Melanie. This might come as a surprise to you, but most of the information we have about Melanie and her siblings actually does not come from mainstream Greek mythology. This is because back then ancient Greeks didn't really like to talk about death and the relating gods, due to the fear they'll bring retribution and bring their death forward if they spoke about it. Instead, the hymn of Melanie and many of the inscriptions we have come from the Orphic Mysteries. These devoted believers followed Orpheus, who was an enamored musician who was absolutely smitten with his bride Eurydice. So in love, he actually went all the way to the underworld and took her back to the land of the living. The Orphic Mysteries follows his story and are a secretive sect of Greek religion that were obsessed and fascinated with all things death. They believed he returned to the land of the living to establish their faith and teach them all about all things to do with the underworld, including the gods that ruled over it. While the Orphic Mysteries follow the same Greek gods and goddesses as mainstream Greek mythology, they interpret them differently, with more focus on the gods and goddesses of death. Their chief goddess was Persephone, and the surviving hymns and inscriptions place little emphasis on famous Olympians. They instead focus their stories on Orpheus and his experiences in the afterlife. One of the people they held heavy focus on was Hades, and by proxy Melanie and her siblings. The Orphic Mysteries have created a few hymns about Melanie that have survived to this day. One of those most famous ones I'm about to read to you now. I call upon Melanie, saffron-cloaked nymph of the earth, whom revered Persephone bore by the mouth of the Cocytus River, upon the sacred bed of Cronian Zeus. In the guise of Pluton, Zeus tricked Persephone, and through the wily plots bedded her. A two-bodied spectre sprang forth from Persephone's fury. This spectre drives mortals to madness with her airy apparitions, as she appears in weird shapes and strange forms. Now plain to the eye, now shadowy, now shining in the darkness. All this in unnerving attacks on the gloom of night. This hymn indicates that Melanie could be kind to the living. Those who show proper honour to the dead were presumably the witness to a hymn called A Kind and Holy Faith. The Orphic people viewed Melanie as a symbol of justice, instead of something to be universally feared. Melanie is a very obscure figure in Greek mythology, and considering she represents all things insane, it leads to a lot of exciting possibilities in her appearance in the upcoming game of Hades 2, where she will be the lead character. It'll be good to see Melanie's journey in Hades 2 as they explore her character based on very little information only given to us by the Orphic Mysteries. I'll be glad if the game gives Melanie her much deserved respect, as she's definitely a goddess I feel is greatly fascinating and deserves a lot of respect and honour for her interest. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I really hope you enjoyed, and please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.